A thief believed he had chosen an ideal location at an ATM, a minor oversight. A woman had a dog with her. He didn't think it was a significant issue. He's committed this crime before. What he wasn't aware of, that wasn't just any dog. It was a trained canine German Shepherd. And the subsequent events left him pleading for assistance. Before we share today's story, please leave a comment below indicating where in the world you are watching from. And if you enjoy extraordinary canine stories such as this one, be sure to click the subscribe button. A sense of anticipation hung in the air. The autumn wind whistled through the deserted streets of downtown, carrying with it the rustling of fallen leaves and the faint sound of city activity. The clock had just indicated 9, and the typically lively financial district was vacant, leaving behind an unsettling quiet, disturbed only by the infrequent passage of vehicles. Emma Walker drew her navy blue jacket more closely around herself, her footsteps resonating against the concrete sidewalk. Nearby, Atlas moved with understated assurance, his substantial German Shepherd build presenting a striking presence under the faint street lamps. His ears were consistently attentive, meticulously observing their environment, a habit developed through years of military instruction. The recognizable blue light of the ATM called to them from the intersection of Winston and 4th. Emma hadn't intended to make a withdrawal so late, but her morning meeting with new clients required her to have cash available. Atlas remained patiently as she neared the machine, his amber eyes mirroring the fluorescent light from the bank's exterior. "Just a quick stop, boy," Emma said softly, retrieving her card from her wallet. The night felt different, somehow quieter than usual. Even the distant traffic seemed softened, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Atlas's ears moved at every small sound. The rustle of paper caught in a fence. The screech of a cat somewhere in the distance. Emma paused, her finger hovering over the keypad. The soft thud of footsteps seemed closer now, more deliberate. Atlas's posture shifted slightly, his muscles tensing beneath his thick fur. She felt it too, that creeping sensation of being watched, of eyes boring into her back from somewhere in the shadows. The ATM screen glowed steadily, waiting for her pin. The wind picked up again, carrying with it the metallic tang of approaching rain. Emma's fingers moved rapidly across the keypad, attempting to disregard the feeling of her heart pounding in her chest. Atlas stayed motionless, but his focus shifted to something behind them, his ears alert, his body tense like a coiled spring. The machine started, beginning to process her transaction. Emma hoped it would proceed more quickly, keenly aware of how vulnerable they were. The street lamp above them flickered once, momentarily extinguishing before sputtering back to illumination. During that instant of darkness, she detected it distinctly, another footstep drawing nearer, and the subtle rasp of metal against cloth. Atlas emitted a low vibration so muted it was barely noticeable. It wasn't his customary warning bark, nor even a growl. This was unlike anything she's heard from him. A sound Emma had only experienced him produce once previously, during their previous training session together. A distinct noise escaped him, a sign he perceived genuine peril. The ATM emitted a beep, releasing her money with precise mechanical action. Emma's hands shook a little as she took the bills, her breath appearing in the chilly night air. She felt Atlas's apprehension emanating from beside her, his training clashing with his innate desire to move, to act, to safeguard. It was then that she detected it. The distinctive sound of a blade being drawn, followed by the thud of heavy footsteps on concrete. Atlas's muscles tensed, poised to act, but before either of them could respond, a harsh voice pierced the night air, hinting at impending violence. "Don't move. Don't even think about it." The voice emerged from the shadows, carrying the confident power of someone experienced in such situations. It lacked the shaky nervousness of a novice. This carried the distinct feel of a seasoned encounter. Emma felt a chill as she became aware of someone behind her. Dangerously close. Unacceptably close. "Give me the money. Now." The money in Emma's grasp suddenly felt heavy. Her past military training resurfaced. Evaluate the circumstances, recognize potential dangers, determine possible courses of action. But each potential solution that crossed her thoughts vanished swiftly. Escape. He was too near. Confront him. The danger was too great. Atlas hadn't moved a muscle beside her, but she perceived the shift in his posture. His body had become tense, with each muscle coiled, ready to act. His eyes, those keen amber orbs, were focused on something behind her, analyzing and evaluating, just as he'd been trained to do in Afghanistan. I said now. Impatience broke through the man's restrained demeanor, a risky sharpness that signaled violence barely contained. Emma turned, her movements slow and precise, mirroring the techniques she's instructed numerous handlers to use in dangerous situations. The man's stature was immediately apparent. He was significantly taller than her, and his dark clothing seemed chosen to disappear into the shadows. However, her attention was drawn to the knife. It was a tactical blade, military grade, with a serrated edge that reflected the ATM's blue light with a threatening gleam. He held it with the easy assurance of someone who knew how to use it well. Atlas emitted a low rumble. It wasn't the typical warning bark of a family pet, but the deliberate threat assessment of a military canine. The sound finally caught the mugger's attention, focusing on the German shepherd. "Shut that mutt up," he spat, gesturing with the knife in a way that indicated formal training in close-quarter combat. "Or I'll do it myself." His eyes moved quickly between Emma and Atlas, conducting rapid threat assessments but incorrectly analyzing the situation. The manner in which he held the knife indicated a familiarity born of dangerous situations, not classroom instruction. "Just take it," Emma said, keeping her voice steady, utilizing the hostage negotiation techniques she's learned over the years. She started to offer her hand with the cash, continuing the gradual, reassuring motions she's practiced in numerous military drills. The man's eyes narrowed as he observed her cooperation, his instincts alerting him that something felt amiss. That's when Atlas barked, not a fearful yelp, but a bark filled with the authority of a trained military canine. The sound resonated off the nearby buildings, a clear signal that carried through the quiet street. The mugger's reaction was slight but significant. He's dealt with dogs previously, but not one like this. A brief expression of anger crossed his face, stemming from a bruised ego more than genuine fear. "I told him to be quiet." His boot struck out with practiced precision, connecting with Atlas's ribs with a jarring impact that indicated steel-toed reinforcement. The German shepherd's yelp pierced Emma's heart like a blade. The sound of her partner in pain sparked something primal within her as she observed him stumble. "Stop!" The word escaped her throat, but the attacker had already shifted focus, closing the gap with the swift movements of a predator. The knife located her throat with a familiar smoothness, its chill edge a stark contrast against her skin. The blade possessed a keen sharpness, a professional quality, the type manufactured for military applications. "Give me the money," his voice rumbled, carrying the musty odor of cigarettes and another, indefinable scent, hinting at more troubling routines. "And everything else you possess, cease the delay." Emma sensed Atlas regaining his composure nearby, the first cry of pain shifting into a deeper, sustained rumble that hinted at military discipline and restrained aggression. The man's gaze had become intense now, moving rapidly between Emma, the cash, and the dog. His hand shook a little as it gripped the knife, but Emma understood it wasn't due to fear. It was adrenaline, the compelling surge of strength that comes from controlling another person's life. "Empty your pockets too. Everything." The knife pressed harder, and Emma felt a sharp sting as the blade's edge made contact with her skin. A single drop of blood appeared and trickled down her neck, feeling warm against her cold skin. It was objectively minor, barely more than a paper cut, but that single drop of blood altered everything. Atlas observed it fall, noting its path as it stained the collar of Emma's jacket crimson. At that instant, a significant alteration occurred in the German shepherd's behavior. Emma perceived it initially, the alteration in the atmosphere, the way Atlas's growl evolved from a caution into something else entirely. His military training, inactive for so long, rose to the surface. The playful companion vanished, replaced by the precise weapon he'd been trained to be. The mugger failed to recognize the change, too engrossed in the contents of Emma's pockets. He failed to notice Atlas's muscles tense, didn't detect the dangerous focus in those amber eyes. He continued issuing commands when Atlas moved forward, a swift movement of concentrated aggression and practiced skill. The moment appeared to stretch as his teeth closed on the mugger's knife hand, hitting the precise spot between thumb and wrist, a technique military canines are trained to disable. The force of the impact propelled both individuals rearward, Atlas's motion designed to destabilize the assailant while preserving his own equilibrium. The man's scream tore through the night, a visceral primal sound originating from within his core and releasing into the deserted street. The knife slipped from his limp fingers, rotating as it descended, reflecting the fluorescent glow of the ATM before striking the damp pavement. A metallic sound reverberated among the nearby buildings, sharply contrasting with the attacker's ongoing cries. "Get him off! Get him off!" The man's voice broke with panic as he struggled violently, his unconstrained arms swinging in frantic motions. However, Atlas's hold demonstrated the result of thousands of hours of military instruction. His jaw exerted a precise force of 450 psi, applied with surgical precision to restrain without causing harm. Each subtle movement of his muscles, every minor adjustment of his grip revealed years of experience and a disturbing readiness. Emma recoiled, her fingertips detecting the faint line of blood on her neck. The minor abrasion throbbed in the cool night air, a stark reminder of how narrowly she had escaped a much graver situation. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she observed Atlas at work. This was not the affectionate friend who nestled on her sofa or retrieved tennis balls in the park. This was a military-grade canine demonstrating years of specialized training with mechanical precision. "I'll kill you." The mugger's free hand swung wildly, attempting to connect with Atlas's head. But the German shepherd moved like liquid shadow, evading each desperate strike while maintaining that iron grip. His training was evident in every action, from how he shielded his vulnerable eyes, to how he adjusted his posture for maximum control, and how he leveraged the man's own force. The attacker's attempts became more hurried, each failure intensifying his panic. Initially sparse, the rain began to fall, quickly becoming a consistent beat. The ATM's blue light illuminated each raindrop, forming a dreamlike scene around the conflict. Water began to darken the pavement, causing the mugger's boots to slip and scrape as he struggled for leverage. But Atlas's paws remained planted with unwavering certainty, his years of training evident in how he adjusted his stance to account for the slick surface. "Let go." Another wild swing whistled through the rain, missing Atlas by inches. The man's face contorted into a mask of pain and fury, his threats dissolving into incoherent sounds of rage and fear. His free hand moved toward his pocket, but Atlas had been trained to identify such actions. The German shepherd subtly altered his hold, adding a precisely measured increase in pressure that produced another howl echoing through the night. Emma's hands shook as she retrieved her phone, raindrops hitting the display. The mugger's eyes grew wider at her action, desperation now evident instead of his previous confidence. "Don't you dare," he growled, trying to move toward her. Atlas's grip remained unyielding, his muscles flexing beneath his increasingly wet fur as he maintained perfect control. Even through the rain, Emma could see the intense focus in his amber eyes, the look of a professional executing his mission with unwavering dedication. Sirens began to wail in the distance, their sound cutting through the steady drumming of the rain. The mugger's struggles intensified, panic now evident in every movement. He struggled to regain his balance, trying to stand. However, Atlas effortlessly blocked the attempt. The German shepherd utilized the man's own force against him, a maneuver perfected through extensive military training. They were returned to the damp pavement, the mugger prone on the ground, Atlas holding him firmly while subtly shifting his position to adapt to the altered situation. "He's going to tear my hand off," the man exclaimed, his earlier aggression vanished, now expressing palpable fear. Emma observed the deliberate composure in Atlas's stance. It wasn't the uncontrolled aggression of an angered animal. Instead, it was the careful regulation of a professionally trained military canine. Each action was intentional, each modification of force accurately assessed. Atlas possessed the capability to inflict significant injury if he selected to, but that wasn't within his training. Regulation, not injury, was consistently the goal. The rain intensified now, adhering Atlas's fur to his robust physique. Streams of water trickled down the mugger's face, mingling with sweat and the tears that had started to fall. His efforts were diminishing, the fight leaving him as the truth became clear. The knife rested abandoned in a spreading pool, its danger lessened by a power its owner had tragically misjudged. "Please," he cried out, his voice faint against the rain and the sound of approaching sirens. "I'm finished. I'm finished. Release him." But Atlas's amber eyes stayed fixed on his objective, his grip firm. His time in the military had instilled in him the ability to remain composed until formally released, and that discipline was evident in his demeanor. His ears remained attentive, monitoring the sound of approaching sirens, while his muscles stayed braced, prepared to respond to any final, frantic actions. The flashing red and blue lights appeared through the rain, reflecting on the damp ground and producing a vibrant array of emergency hues. The mugger ceased struggling, lying face down on the ground with his hands securely held in Atlas's grip. His chest rose and fell with labored breaths, each exhale a testament to his utter defeat. Emma observed as police cars arrived, their headlights piercing the rain. Officers dismounted, weapons drawn. "Police, remain still." The order sliced through the rain, distinct and forceful. 3 officers appeared through the rain, their tactical flashlights illuminating the area with bright white light. Emma raised her hands slowly, intentionally showing her empty palms. The movement caused a slight pain from the small cut on her neck, a reminder of how narrowly things had unfolded. "He's the one," she stated, her voice calm despite her rapid heartbeat. She indicated the subdued mugger with a careful motion. "My dog. He's trained." The former military canine reacted to his training, not displaying aggressive behavior. She maintained a professional tone, recognizing the vital importance of these initial moments for the safety of all involved. The officers advanced with tactical precision, their movements deliberate and synchronized. Their flashlight beams pierced the rain-filled air, revealing a scene that spoke volumes. A combat knife rested in a spreading puddle, its edge still reflecting the light, as the mugger lay secured on the damp pavement. Atlas, demonstrating remarkable composure, held him with practiced accuracy while rain flowed down his strong physique. He showed no reaction to the arriving officers, nor did he increase his hold. His military background was evident in his posture. "Ma'am, is this your dog?" As one officer moved closer to Emma, his colleagues continued to monitor the area, their hands positioned near their weapons but not deployed. His nameplate reflected the light, identifying him as Martinez, and his actions indicated extensive experience. Emma observed his approach from a strategic angle, mindful of her personal space and Atlas's possible response area. She subtly touched the faint mark on her neck, a reminder of where the knife had caused a cut. The rain had washed away the blood, but the memory remained vivid. Yes, this is Atlas. His background included service in a K-9 unit with 3 tours in Afghanistan, where he specialized in suspect apprehension and handler protection. Officer Martinez observed Atlas with the experienced gaze of someone accustomed to working dogs. The German Shepherd's grip was precise, maintaining control without inflicting undue harm, his body aligned to impede any attempts at escape from the suspect. "I see that," Martinez stated, a genuine note of admiration in his voice. "That's not civilian training we're looking at. Never really leaves them, does it? That military precision." He keyed his radio, his voice calm and professional. "Dispatch, be advised, we've got a military K-9 on scene. Situation is contained. Subject is secured by the K-9. No additional units needed." Code 3. The mugger, his face pressed against the wet pavement, had abandoned all pretense of resistance. His voice emerged as a pleading whisper, a stark contrast to his previous threats. "Please just get this beast off me. I can't feel my hand anymore. Please." Martinez replied calmly, almost clinically. "You can feel it just fine. That's a military-trained bite hold. If you couldn't feel your hand, that would mean he wanted to cause actual damage. Trust me, if he wanted to hurt you, you'd be in an ambulance right now, not talking." He turned to Emma, maintaining a professional demeanor. "Ma'am, when you are prepared, you may give him the release command. We currently have sufficient officers present." Emma approached, her voice possessing the authority that Atlas was trained to acknowledge, even as her hands still shook. "Atlas, release." The instruction was barely finished when Atlas reacted, showcasing his excellent training. He released his grasp immediately, retreating precisely 2 steps. The established procedure for preserving tactical superiority while establishing a secure perimeter. His gaze remained fixed on the suspect, his posture still tense and prepared to react should the situation escalate. Each action was deliberate, restrained, and professional. 2 officers approached seamlessly, their handcuffs produced with practiced skill. As they restrained the mugger's hands behind his back, their flashlights illuminated the confirmation of Atlas's exacting command. There were no signs of injury. There were no serious lacerations, only deep impression marks that would result in significant bruising. This demonstrated a level of control honed by years of military training. Martinez picked up the knife with a gloved hand, inspecting it with a professional eye. It was a 7-inch tactical blade, featuring a serrated edge. He looked at the mugger, then at Atlas. You are fortunate you realize that. Many dogs, even those with training, would have inflicted severe wounds when they observed their owner experiencing bleeding. This one, however, he indicated Atlas, who remained watchful beside Emma, poised for action. He understood his actions precisely. This wasn't merely training, it was military precision. The mugger faltered as officers escorted him to a waiting patrol car, his soaked clothing dripping onto the ground. A mix of fear and anger colored his voice as he yelled over his shoulder, "That dog's a weapon. Could have killed me. You all witnessed it. It's dangerous." Martinez's reply reflected considerable experience. He did not harm you. Rather, he applied precisely the force necessary to prevent you from causing harm to another person. That is not a weapon, it's a professional. He addressed Emma, his deference clear. We will require a complete statement from you, ma'am. And frankly, I'm very interested in learning more about your companion. We rarely observe this degree of restraint in non-military circumstances. Emma moved to kneel alongside Atlas, her fingers tracing the well-known patterns through his damp fur. His muscles remained taut, prepared for action, yet his eyes began to relax at her touch. The shift was captivating to observe. The sharp military focus slowly receded, akin to a meticulously sharpened blade being carefully returned to its sheath. 3 tours in Afghanistan, she mentioned, unable to suppress the pride in her tone despite the remaining adrenaline. He was trained in suspect apprehension and handler protection. I collaborated with him during his final year of service. Her fingers located the area behind his ears that he enjoyed, and Atlas shifted closer to her touch, even as his gaze followed the officers guiding his target toward the patrol car. The hearing impairment resulting from an IED explosion necessitated early retirement. However, as you can observe, the training remains ingrained. Martinez acknowledged this, a sincere look of gratitude on his face. That clarifies the degree of control we just observed. Even well-trained civilian dogs would likely have reacted aggressively after witnessing their owner threatened. He indicated the area where evidence markers were being positioned around the knife and blood droplets. This demonstrated a textbook military apprehension technique, minimum force, maximum control, the kind of precision achieved through thousands of hours of specialized training. He retrieved his notebook, its pages dampened by the rain. Would you be willing to provide us with your complete statement? This incident serves as an excellent illustration of appropriate force employed in civilian defense, a scenario that could be valuable for training exercises. The heavy rain had begun to ease, settling into a gentle drizzle that caught the light from newly arrived patrol cars, creating shifting patterns of red and blue on the wet streets. Officers were moving purposefully around the scene, photographing evidence, marking positions, and documenting how one mugger had learned the hard way about underestimating a retired military canine. Emma stroked Atlas's back, sensing the strong muscles that had benefited from his training. The disciplined soldier was fading now, giving way to her beloved companion, although she understood that this other facet of him would always remain, poised to surface immediately if necessary. Ready to deliver our statement, boy? She inquired gently. Atlas gazed up at her, his amber eyes bright and watchful, and then rose gracefully, water dripping from his coat in shimmering trails. Martinez guided them to his patrol car, where they could record their statements in a dry place. He mused, we could genuinely benefit from having a dog like him to showcase correct canine restraint methods at the academy. Those particular control skills are uncommon, particularly in retirement. The manner in which he sustained that hold while preventing significant harm is precisely what we aim to instruct our canine units. He accessed the car's rear door. Would you consider assisting us in demonstrating authentic professional restraint to our trainees? An hour later, Emma was seated in her living room, holding a warm cup of tea, observing Atlas as he rested on his bed close to the fireplace. He had completely dried off after they arrived home, but she still used a towel to dry him, carefully examining him for any injuries from the kick he'd received. There were no visible marks. He was as tough as always. The occurrences of the night replayed in her thoughts. The ATM, the knife, that single drop of blood that had activated Atlas's training. She touched her neck, where the minor cut had already ceased bleeding, practically just a scratch. The mugger's words replayed in her mind. That dog's a weapon, but he'd been mistaken. Atlas wasn't a weapon, he was a protector, trained to apply precisely the appropriate force, and nothing more. Officer Martinez's card was on her coffee table. He's been sufficiently impressed to propose that Atlas could assist in training new canine units, demonstrating what true control resembled. Most dogs either fail to engage or escalate the situation, he had clarified. What your dog did tonight, that's the ideal example. Impeccable restraint, impeccable control. Atlas's ears twitched at a sound from outside, but his body stayed loose. The military sharpness he had shown previously had completely faded, yielding to the calm presence she knew so well. Still, Emma recognized more deeply than ever that both aspects of him were genuinely present, equally significant. The training hadn't made him perilous, it had made him dependable. Her phone vibrated with a text from her sister. Just saw the police report. Are you okay? Emma smiled, quickly typing back, we're fine, Atlas handled it. She anticipated a wave of questions tomorrow, but for now, she simply wanted to sit with her guardian, her friend. Come here, boy, she called softly. Atlas rose immediately, padding over to settle beside her chair. She ran her fingers through his fur, still slightly damp from the rain. You're still the same good boy you've always been, she murmured, just with some extra skills we hope we never need. Atlas gazed at her, his intelligent amber eyes reflecting the unwavering dedication Emma had always recognized, the ability to transition swiftly from playful friend to resolute guardian based on her needs. The mugger had perceived only the focus of his training, but Emma understood the complete picture. She saw the kind spirit who enjoyed belly rubs, and the skilled professional capable of neutralizing an armed assailant with precise technique. A distant siren echoed somewhere in the city, and Atlas's ears twitched toward the sound, but his eyes remained fixed on Emma, clear and alert, prepared as always for whatever might occur. She smiled, scratching that spot behind his ears that he loved. I think we've experienced enough excitement for one night, haven't we? Tomorrow she knew she'd have to file more reports. Police inquiries, concerned calls from friends and family, and potential media attention regarding the military dog who thwarted an armed robbery were all possibilities. However, for tonight it was simply the pair, secure and united. Emma relaxed further in her chair, the last traces of adrenaline dissipating. Atlas rested his head on her lap, a reassuring weight that conveyed protection and loyalty. The rain had ceased entirely, leaving the city refreshed and still. Good boy, Atlas, she murmured, her voice filled with pride and gratitude. Good boy. As Atlas settled comfortably beneath her hand, Emma realized that while she hoped to never endure another night like this, she could handle anything with her trained guardian present. What would you do in a similar situation? Has your dog ever shielded you from harm? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Consider this. Do you believe military and police dogs should be allowed to retire with their handlers? I read every comment. If you enjoyed the Atlas story of bravery and protection, please like the video. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to receive notifications for future incredible canine stories. Explore these other compelling canine stories currently displayed. Each highlights the remarkable connection between handlers and their expertly trained partners. Until next time, remember, behind every exceptional canine is a story of loyalty, training, and unwavering courage. The funeral was silent, heavy with grief until the police dog acted. He jumped onto his handler's casket, and his subsequent actions left the entire room in tears. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The October morning arrived gray and somber, as if the sky reflected the sadness of those assembled at Oakwood Memorial Chapel. A cool breeze stirred the nearby maple trees, their crimson leaves sometimes detaching to briefly swirl, before landing on the gravel pathway where numerous police cruisers were arranged in precise formation. Within the chapel, the atmosphere was thick with the combined fragrances of polished wood, floral displays, and the palpable stress of shared sorrow. Officers in dress blues occupied the pews, their badges adorned with black mourning bands. Their faces, typically hardened by years of service, visibly strained to remain composed as they observed the flag-draped casket at the room's front. Officer Michael Mike Reeves, 34 years old and an 8-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, a recipient of 2 commendations for bravery, rested silently within the wooden box. An official portrait, positioned on an easel next to the casket, depicted a man with keen hazel eyes and a gentle smile that didn't fully convey a solemn demeanor. In the front row, Mike's parents were seated, visibly burdened by the sorrow of outliving their son. His mother held a handkerchief, while his father, a former officer, gazed forward. Next to them, Mike's sister Elaine dabbed at tears that appeared unending, her shoulders shaking with each inhale. Near the side entrance, a disturbance caught the attention of several people. Officer Terrence Wilson worked to manage a Belgian Malinois, whose strong physique trembled with anticipation. The dog's golden-brown eyes moved quickly around the chapel, examining every face and every area, as if looking for someone expected to be present. "Easy, Ranger," Wilson said softly, tightening his hold on the leash as the dog made a low, mournful sound. Ranger had been Mike's partner for 4 years. Working as a team, they had located missing children, arrested dangerous suspects, and uncovered hidden contraband that could have gone unnoticed. They were the K-9 unit's most accomplished team. Now Ranger's ears twitched, his nose working intensely, showing uncertainty in his posture. 4 years prior, Officer Mike Reeves had been in the impersonal hallway of the Regional K-9 Training Center, anxiously straightening his uniform collar. Following 6 years of patrol work, he received approval for the K-9 unit, a goal he'd held since his academy days. The training sergeant, a stern woman named Martinez with 20 years of experience visible on her face, guided him towards the kennels. She cautioned him, her keys making noise as they walked, not to become too attached too quickly. He would work with 3 prospects before final assignments were made. Some partnerships succeed, others fail. The dog's choice is as important as your own. A lively atmosphere filled the kennel area. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds were watchful in their enclosures. Martinez paused at the 3rd kennel, where a tan Malinois with distinctive facial markings stood rigidly at attention, amber eyes following every movement. "This is Ranger, 18 months old, imported from a European working line," Martinez said, observing Mike's reaction. "He has a high drive, high intelligence, and could be too intense for some handlers." A prior candidate found him unmanageable, describing him as too intense. Mike lowered himself to the dog's level, keeping eye contact. Typically, police dogs displayed immediate enthusiasm or aggression upon approach, but Ranger was an exception. He stayed perfectly still, evaluating Mike with a disconcerting intensity, as if peering directly through him. "Hey there, partner," Mike said gently. At those words, a slight alteration appeared in Ranger's stance. A minor change that only Martinez detected, his eyebrows lifting a little. The dog moved toward the kennel gate with careful steps, paused once to sniff at Mike's offered hand, then settled, holding eye contact. "Well," Martinez said, "that's certainly not what I expected." The bond was instant, though neither person nor dog could articulate it. When they started training together the following day, the other handlers observed in amazement as Ranger seemed to predict Mike's instructions almost before he voiced them. By the 3rd week, Martinez discontinued the rotations, formally assigning pairs. Their initial significant challenge arose 6 months later, a missing 10-year-old child in Oakwood Park. The search had been ongoing for hours, with numerous agencies searching the thick woodland as night fell and temperatures decreased. Mike observed Ranger assessing the scene, tracking a scent trail that other canines had overlooked. "He's detected something," Mike transmitted to the command post. "We are proceeding east towards the creek bed." Rain had begun to fall, washing away scent particles, but Ranger never hesitated. He led Mike through thickets and over fallen trees until they found the boy, huddled beneath an overhanging embankment, hypothermic but alive. Their partnership extended beyond statistics. Mike had remained single, his apartment becoming their shared domain. Morning runs continued regardless of weather. Evenings were spent reinforcing training exercises that had become more like games, their lives completely intertwined. Mike's parents had thoughtfully provided Ranger with a Christmas stocking, acknowledging him as part of the family. The 911 call was received at 2:34 a.m. on Thursday, reporting a domestic disturbance on Elm Street, a residential area of modest single-family homes. Dispatch records indicated this was the third call originating from that address within the past 2 months, with prior incidents resolved without any arrests. Officer Chun was already en route, requesting additional support as per standard protocol. K9-7 was ready to assist, as Mike had radioed, with Ranger alert in the specialized compartment behind him. Acknowledged K9-7. The report indicated a male subject, possibly armed, with children present in the home. Mike's cruiser arrived approximately half a block from the address, maintaining dark lights to minimize the risk of escalation. Chen's patrol car was already on scene, positioned strategically to provide cover. Mike secured Ranger's tactical harness, and the dog instantly transitioned to working mode. "Report, what is the situation?" "Mike," she said as they neared Chun, who was positioned behind her vehicle door, hand on her holster. The male subject was identified as Jacob Reynolds, age 42. His wife had initiated the call, stating he had been consuming alcohol and had begun threatening her with a handgun when she announced her intention to leave him. 2 children were present inside the residence, aged 8 and 5. The house appeared dark, with only a single light illuminating the living room. Abruptly, the front door swung open, and a woman emerged, holding 2 children, all still in pajamas. "He's got a gun," she gasped, as Chen directed them towards the patrol cars. He stated he wasn't returning to jail. A records check verified Reynolds had previous arrests for assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. The situation had progressed from a domestic disturbance to a potential armed standoff. Reinforcements were on the way, estimated time of arrival 4 minutes. Dispatch updated, SWAT alerted but assembling. "We might not have 4 minutes," Mike responded, observing movement at the window. The subject appeared increasingly agitated. Additional patrol units arrived, officers taking positions around the perimeter. Mike released Ranger's leash, giving him a hand signal to stay close, a command that would keep the dog within 3 feet without restricting his movement. They proceeded to the side of the house, utilizing shadows for cover. "Got a visual," Mike reported quietly into his shoulder. Mike's subject in living room, confirmed armed, handgun in right hand, appears highly agitated. Captain Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "Hold positions."
Ostage négociateur en route.
Reynolds, however, disregarded the order. The front door exploded inward. A figure appeared against the light within, weapon raised. "Stay back," he yelled, swinging the gun haphazardly between officers. Reynolds discharged a stray shot that struck Chen's patrol car. Officers retreated behind cover, issuing verbal instructions but refraining from firing due to the family's location behind vehicles. Reynolds moved down the front steps. One now pointed directly at the group, including his wife and children. Mike assessed the situation instantly. Reynolds had an unobstructed view of his family. Officers lacked a secure vantage point, and the man's finger was closing on the trigger. Mike gave Ranger the silent command they'd practiced repeatedly. 2 quick taps on his thigh, indicating an apprehension attack. Ranger surged forward with explosive speed, a tan blur in the darkness. At the same time, Mike moved to flank, positioning himself between Reynolds and his intended targets. Reynolds noticed the dog approaching and redirected his weapon towards the new danger. 2 shots echoed through the night. Ranger connected with Reynolds' arm, the expertly trained bite causing the man to drop his weapon. Both men went down, but Reynolds managed to fire first, with a bullet impacting Mike's chest just beneath his vest. A second shot followed from Mike's service weapon as he fell, hitting Reynolds in the shoulder, disabling him but not fatally. "Officer down! Officer down!" Chen's voice broke over the radio as she hurried to Mike, who had fallen onto the asphalt. Ranger kept his hold on Reynolds until another officer secured the suspect, then immediately moved away from the scene, a course of action he would not typically take, and rushed to Mike's side. The dog whined, pawing at his partner's chest where blood was quickly spreading across his uniform. "Stay with me, Reeves," Chen urged, applying pressure to the wound. "Bus is 2 minutes out." Mike's breathing came in shallow gasps, his eyes finding Ranger's. He whispered, "Good boy," lifting a shaking hand to touch the dog's head. "Best partner ever." Ranger lay down beside him, pressing his body against Mike's side as paramedics arrived. They worked frantically, loading Mike into the ambulance, but the bullet had struck at an angle that sent it beneath the protective vest, severing a major artery. Officer Michael Reeves was pronounced dead at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 3:28 a.m. While emergency personnel desperately attempted resuscitation, Ranger stayed in the emergency room hallway, with Officer Wilson holding his leash. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the trauma bay doors. When the doctor finally came out, shaking his head, Ranger appeared to comprehend before any words were spoken. His body drooped, the confident stance faltering as a howl began, a sound so intense, so resembling human sorrow, that seasoned emergency staff averted their gaze. Inside the chapel, the funeral service had commenced. Chief Roberts moved to the podium, his usual strong demeanor tempered by sorrow. Officer Michael Reeves represented the epitome of what it means to serve in the badge. He began to speak, his resonant voice firm despite the emotion evident in his eyes. During his 8 years of service, he demonstrated consistent courage, compassion, and dedication to this community. Nearby, Ranger's restlessness grew. Wilson held the leash securely, yet the dog's attention remained fixed, focused on the casket where his partner rested. The chief noted that Mike's devotion to his canine partner, Ranger, had forged one of the most successful teams in our department. Together they were credited with over 200 successful operations, saving countless lives and enhancing the safety of our community. Mike's mother wept softly, comforted by her husband's embrace. His sister Elaine remained stiffly beside them, sometimes touching the canine unit pin Mike had given her last Christmas. Captain Walsh then stepped to the podium, recounting a memory of Mike's first day on patrol. He arrived 30 minutes early, his uniform so impeccably pressed it appeared it could have cut paper, Walsh remembered, prompting a few sorrowful smiles. When I inquired about his promptness, he stated, "My dad always told me if you're on time, you're already late." Mike consistently exceeded expectations. As personal recollections transitioned into the official ceremony, Ranger displayed increasing signs of distress. The dog breathed rapidly, adjusting his posture, and kept his gaze fixed on the casket. Wilson worked to manage the situation, understanding the importance of the moment, yet obligated to ensure order throughout the service. The department chaplain commenced the religious segment of the service, his words of comfort seeming inadequate given the sight of a flag-draped casket and a room filled with grief. Though Officer Reeves walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, the chaplain stated. At these words, Ranger emitted a low whine that resonated through the quiet chapel, and several heads turned, with expressions of understanding rather than annoyance appearing on their faces. The service continued with the presentation of Mike's badge and service weapon to his parents. The department's bagpipe player moved to the front, the poignant melody of Amazing Grace echoing through the chapel. As the bagpipes ceased, a quiet stillness settled over the chapel. The funeral director walked to the podium, ready to provide directions for the procession to the cemetery. Prior to speaking, Ranger's demeanor changed significantly. The Belgian Malinois froze, his body trembling as if electrified. His eyes fixed on the casket widened. His breathing quickened, nostrils flaring as he perceived something only he could detect. Every muscle in his powerful frame tensed, coiling like a spring. "Something's wrong," Wilson whispered to Martinez, tightening his grip on the leash. "He's never acted like this before." Martinez recognized the signs. "That's not aggression," she whispered back. "That's recognition." At that moment, Ranger initiated his action with a swift advance that surprised Wilson. The dog broke free of the leash held by his handler. Multiple officers reacted to try and stop him, but Ranger was too quick. His actions were deliberate and purposeful as he sped down the central aisle. A collective intake of breath spread through the chapel as the Belgian Malinois moved toward the front, his paws making no sound on the carpeted floor. Mike's mother emitted a quiet cry, his father partially rising from his seat. Chief Roberts prepared to proceed, yet Ranger's behavior created a moment of hesitation for all present. It wasn't a display of hostility or fear, it was a sign of clear intention. Ranger approached the casket and halted, inhaling deeply around its sides. Then, with the same effortless skill that had distinguished him during his service, he jumped up, his front paws landing softly on the casket's rim. For a brief instant, he maintained his balance there, his amber eyes assessing the gathered mourners as if awaiting consent. There was no movement and no sound. A hush fell over the entire room. Ranger, with deliberate motions, pulled himself completely onto the casket, his nails producing the faintest clicking sound on the polished wood. The American flag covering the casket moved a little under his weight. The dog turned once, then positioned himself on top of the casket, directly above where Mike's chest would be. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered, tears flowing down her face. Ranger lowered his head, pressing his nose against the wood. He took a deep breath, then released it in a trembling exhale that appeared to hold all the grief imaginable. His ears pressed against his head as he whined, a sound so sorrowful it seemed to permeate the very walls. "Should I?" Wilson began, taking a tentative step forward. Captain Walsh raised a hand, halting him. "No," he said softly, "let him be." The dog's behavior shifted from active to observant. He assumed the familiar alert stance he had held many times in the patrol car, watchful, protective, prepared. His gaze moved across the room as if still performing his duties, still safeguarding his partner. Ranger remained perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in a pattern that appeared synchronized with an unseen power. The first shock among those grieving subsided into a deep silence, not distressing, but respectful. Then Ranger performed an action that shifted the moment from poignant to truly unforgettable. With deliberate slowness, he lifted his right paw and pressed it flat against the American flag, precisely over the spot where Mike's badge would be on his uniform. He maintained the position, unwavering, resolute, and clear. Elaine reacted with a gasp, her hand covering her mouth. "The salute," she breathed, her voice just audible to those close by. "That's Mike's special signal." A quiet buzz of conversation arose within the chapel, as those familiar with the meaning shared it with others. 3 years prior, Mike had developed a distinctive training cue with Ranger. It was a discreet signal, used exclusively between them, a customized gesture that Ranger would execute only in reaction to Mike's particular hand movement. This was not a component of regular police K-9 instruction. It was intimate, unique, and shared solely by them. Officer Chun, who was present the night Mike passed, moved closer to Captain Walsh. "Mike's last touch," she whispered, her voice cracking. Prior to the ambulance arrival, he touched Ranger's head in the manner he always used when issuing that command. It wasn't simply a gesture, Martinez explained softly to those present. It represented their method of conveying a message, signifying mission accomplishment when verbal communication was impossible. I have never observed another team exhibiting such a profound connection. As Ranger held the salute, his gaze remained steady and observant, as if anticipating additional direction. A profound quiet settled over the chapel, punctuated only by quiet weeping from Mike's family. Mike's father rose abruptly, his action capturing everyone's attention. The former officer moved toward the casket deliberately, maintaining a dignified posture despite the sadness visible on his face. He halted near Ranger, standing respectfully without touching the dog. Then, with careful control, he performed a formal police salute. Mission accomplished. Son, he said, his voice thick with feeling but audible in the still room. One by one, each uniformed officer in the chapel stood and repeated the gesture, a multitude of salutes recognizing not only their deceased comrade, but the connection they were observing. Even civilian mourners rose, palms on their chests, accepting something beyond common comprehension. Ranger maintained his posture for a few more seconds, then gradually lowered his paw. He adjusted his position near the casket, turning to look at Mike's father. The dog's ears rose, his keen eyes observing the man's face. He was so proud to be your partner, Mike's father said to Ranger, his voice a quiet murmur. Every day he told us how fortunate he was to have you. The chaplain, who had been observing with evident feeling, moved forward once more. In 20 years of service to the department, he said, speaking to those present, I have conducted far too many ceremonies like this one. I have never seen such a demonstration of the connection between an officer and his canine partner. He paused, regaining his composure. It seems there are relationships in this world that even death cannot break. The chaplain's words appeared to fill the chapel, offering solace where it had seemed impossible just before. Mike's mother, who had been almost devastated, stood a little straighter, her gaze fixed on Ranger. Mike frequently claimed the dog understood everything, she stated, in a voice audible to those around. He asserted Ranger could occasionally read his mind. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I believed he was overstating things. Chief Roberts approached the podium once more, his own demeanor noticeably strained. I believe we should modify our proceedings, he remarked, glancing at the funeral director. It seems Ranger will be with his partner for the rest of the service. Throughout the service, Ranger stayed on the casket, a quiet protector watching over his companion. The funeral director, showing impressive flexibility, modified the arrangements to accommodate the dog. The customary pallbearers were in place, though questions remained regarding the concluding procession. We need to proceed to the cemetery shortly, the director said to Captain Walsh. Walsh responded with a nod, then moved towards the casket with deliberate steps. Ranger spoke softly, mirroring the tone he had often heard Mike use. We need to take Mike now. The dog's ears twitched at the familiar name, his amber eyes following Walsh's movements. He remained still, shifting his weight and settling more firmly atop the American flag. Mike's sister, Elaine, rose from her seat, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. She walked towards the casket, her steps unsteady but resolute. She had observed the strong connection between her brother and his canine partner from the very beginning. She recalled numerous family dinners where Ranger sat at Mike's feet, and holidays where the dog received gifts alongside everyone else. Ranger, she said softly, extending her hand palm up, mirroring the gesture she had seen Mike use many times. It's okay, boy. The Belgian Malinois' attention turned to her, his nostrils flaring slightly as he analyzed her scent. The scent was close enough to Mike's to be recognized as belonging to his family. His ears moved forward, his head tilting as if assessing the situation. Mike would be so proud of you, she said, her voice cracking. You were the best partner he could have wished for, the best friend. Something in her words, or perhaps her tone, appeared to connect with the dog. Ranger looked from Elaine to the casket below him, then back to her. A quiet whine came from his throat. It wasn't a sound of distress now, but of inquiry. I know, she murmured. I miss him too. With extreme gentleness, she placed her hand on the dog's back. Ranger tensed briefly, then relaxed into the touch. Elaine stroked his fur, mirroring the way she'd seen her brother do after their shifts together. We need to take Mike to his resting place now, she explained, speaking as if the dog understood every word. Perhaps he did. Will you help us do that? The chapel remained utterly silent, with everyone holding their breath as they observed this private moment. Ranger regarded Elaine for a considerable time, then rose slowly and deliberately. His movements were measured and respectful, ensuring his stability on the casket's curved top. For a brief moment he stood rigidly, resembling a dog in peak condition. Then, with a grace that moved many to tears, he descended from the casket, stepping gently onto the carpeted floor near Elaine. Wilson moved forward with the leash, but Elaine halted him with a raised hand. "Let him walk with us," she said, "with no restrictions." Mike would have wanted it. Chief Roberts gave his consent, and Wilson moved aside. The pallbearers arranged themselves, raising the casket with coordinated precision. As the solemn procession began its descent down the central aisle, Ranger stepped alongside the casket, positioned at heel, precisely where he would have walked beside Mike during patrols. Outside, the autumn air held the fragrance of rain in the distance. The hearse door closed with a quiet finality, sealing the last chapter. Ranger watched, a flicker of confusion returning to his stance. Wilson approached, anticipating the dog might need reassurance, but before he could offer the leash, Ranger acted. The Belgian Malinois walked purposefully to the police motorcycle that would lead the procession, Mike's motorcycle, now solemnly draped in ceremonial black bunting. Ranger settled beside it, adopting the familiar posture he'd used countless times when Mike was getting ready for their shift. Captain Walsh looked at the motorcycle officer who would be leading the procession. "Can you accommodate him?" The officer, who had previously worked with Mike and Ranger for years, responded immediately. "It would be an honor, sir." With care, the officer assisted Ranger into the specially adapted sidecar, designed for K-9 transport during parades and ceremonial events. The dog relaxed, his demeanor alert yet composed, as if accepting the situation. Upon arrival at the cemetery, the concluding ceremonies proceeded with military formality. The honor guard conveyed the casket to the gravesite, with Ranger following closely, still unrestrained but maintaining impeccable control. The chaplain offered concluding words of solace as the casket was placed. As the formal folding of the flag commenced, Ranger observed with unwavering attention, following each action. The carefully folded triangle was given to Mike's mother, who held it close. Next, the rifle salute occurred, 3 volleys that echoed through the autumn air. Ranger reacted slightly at the initial shots, but remained in position. By the 3rd volley, he remained perfectly still at attention, seemingly acknowledging the respect being shown. As the bugler played taps, the somber notes lingered in the air. Ranger advanced 3 steps. With careful movements, he lifted his paw again, pressing it against the casket in that customary salute, a concluding gesture between comrades that moved many to tears. When the final note subsided, Ranger retreated, then settled down near the gravesite, his chin resting on his paws. He remained steadfast until the last mourner had left. The cemetery gradually emptied, with mourners departing in small groups, many taking a moment to look back at the striking scene. A devoted dog kept watch near his partner's final resting place. Mike's family were the last to leave the gravesite. His father knelt beside Ranger, placing a calloused hand on the dog's back. "You'll always have a home with us, boy," he said, his voice thick with feeling. Mike would have wanted us to support one another at this time. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him, its amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that went beyond the boundaries of species. He shifted a little closer, acknowledging the bond, then turned his attention to the casket now being placed in the ground. Captain Walsh came forward, taking off his formal hat and holding it to his chest. He stated that the department had considered Ranger's future. Traditionally, canines are retired after their handlers pass away. Mike's mother looked up sharply. He was too young to retire. Too skilled. Walsh nodded. "That's what we believe as well. With your permission, Officer Wilson has volunteered to become Ranger's new handler. They already share a connection, and Wilson initially trained with Mike." Elaine wiped away fresh tears. Mike would agree. He often said Wilson was the only other officer Ranger seemed to truly listen to. As if in agreement with her words, Ranger stood, shaking his coat slightly. He glanced between the family members and Walsh, then purposefully moved to stand beside Wilson, who had come closer quietly. "I'll never replace Mike," Wilson said, his voice faltering. "I wouldn't attempt to, but I pledge to you and Ranger that I will respect their partnership in our work together." Ranger looked once more at the gravesite, his stance conveying a sense of finality, an acceptance that had not been visible previously. With deliberate movements, he turned and walked beside Wilson toward the waiting police vehicles. He did not look back. As any good officer would, He was moving forward, carrying the legacy of his fallen partner with him into whatever missions awaited. The bond between a canine officer and their handler exemplifies one of the most sincere partnerships in law enforcement, founded on absolute trust, steadfast loyalty, and a connection that transcends verbal communication. The final tribute given by Ranger serves as a poignant reminder that profound feelings are often conveyed through actions rather than words. Have you ever observed a moment where an animal appeared to comprehend death or loss in a manner that seemed inexplicable? What fosters such strong connections between humans and their canine partners that they can surpass even the final parting? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who appreciates the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. These incredible dogs risk their lives alongside human officers every day, demonstrating courage and loyalty that deserve our recognition and respect. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about police canine heroes. Our collection of true stories about dogs keeps expanding, with new videos added each week to display these extraordinary collaborations. Please view the suggested videos currently displayed for additional moving narratives that emphasize the steadfast commitment of police dogs nationwide. We will also see you again tomorrow at the same time with another fresh video.